Well, week one is done. It was exciting. Some surprises, good and bad. So we'll go over all that. Plus, how do you think Nick Saban feels about his quarterback doing a podcast every week during the season? We cover that. Plus, we make our picks for this upcoming week on today's episode of Third Saturday in October, your SEC tailgate podcast for the rest of us. Find us online at thirdsaturdaynoctober.com, where you can get our tailgating cheat sheet, as well as links to all of our social media profiles, YouTube, where we broadcast the podcast. I am Tennessee Bradley. With me, as always, is Alabama Chris. Week two. So we've made it through week one of a regular season. We're on to week two. Things feel a little bit more normal.
Dude, we are here. We are now mid-season. I mean, again, it's a very front end of it, but like we're in the football season. Like I'm just so happy that we're here. I'm stoked that we are here as like an SEC fan base, excited for our teams. We're looking forward now. We have a bit of information to gather or to use to make decisions moving forward, which is great. And you and I are doing something a little different this year. We're doing the Monday morning quarterbacks as a way for us to talk about our new or like the game is over. What do we think about it? And we're offering that up for everybody, almost like a call-in thing. We'd love to hear from you. So it's been fun getting used to that too. I want to make sure that we say that anybody can send in an audio or a video clip to podcast at thirdsaturdaynoctober.com. But man, this is fun. I love like getting more of a fresh take from us and then also the fans. Yeah. So you don't have to wait until all the way until next Friday, almost a week later, to hear what we thought about the game. You can hear about us on Monday. And then on Friday, we'll just talk about what's coming up for the new week. So I'm loving how things are playing out. What about you?
Yeah. So just to recap, Monday morning quarterback, what it is it's a post-game reaction from you, the fan. You don't have to break down analysis. You don't have to watch game film. No, it's just, how do you feel walking away from the game? Not to get all touchy feely, but did for me, I felt like, okay, the offense did a pretty good job for three quarters. But we really had issues in one quarter. We had the passing game looked okay. And just coming away, how did I feel? And then I go and look at the stats, and actually the stats showed me I felt a little worried about the running game. The stats said otherwise. So it's very fun, but all you have to do is record something. Voice memo is fine. Just record a video. That's fine. Send it to podcast at thirdsaturdaynoctober.com. Just do that by Sunday night at midnight. So best thing to do is just record it right after the game. Mm-hmm. Your feelings are fresh. You're still excited, good or bad. Just record that, send it off, but you can also do it on Sunday and send it to us, and we'll post that on Monday. You'll see it right there on your podcast app or on YouTube.
You don't even have to do anything different. It just will arrive in there as a new fresh episode every week that you get to hear us on the front end of the week as well as the back end.
Yeah. And so that's where we can talk about our surprises from week one, which let's do right now. Surprises week one, I think LSU was a big surprise. I did not expect them to get two beat like that at UCLA. I mean, I don't know how much a cross-country trip factors in. There's also the fact that Hurricane Ida was hitting their home as they were evacuating, going to Houston for a few days and then going to LA for a few days. So, I mean, it was just a wild week. I don't know. We'll have to see how they bounce back against McNeese, but that surprised me. I would say Vanderbilt surprised me. I knew they weren't good, but
me too.
And probably, Auburn surprised me. That was Bo Nick specifically surprised me. Alabama putting a hurting on Miami.
Yeah.
Mississippi State coming up short. I think these were all surprises to me. What about you, Chris? What were you surprised by, for good, for better, or for worse in week one?
Yeah, I remember us talking last week on the Friday show about wondering what kind of factor Hurricane Ida was going to play with LSU, and either saying that it was going to be motivation, or it was going to possibly look at it as something that their minds are elsewhere, not necessarily in the game. And it seems like that if we were to have a takeaway with that kind of hurricane and the displacement and having to be somewhere other than your home field practice and all the travel and stuff, maybe it had a bit of it took away from the experience. So that was a bit of a bummer. I thought I was all ready for Mike Leach and the Air Raid Pirates over at Mississippi State to really just show me that, like, in year 2, game 1, we're going to bring it to them. But it was a surprise because they didn't. As Funny Main over on YouTube, that Bama fan who does the week 1 or the reactions to Bama fans watching all the games and then the Bama game, he calls it struggle busing. And so, a couple of the teams, Vanderbilt especially, but Mississippi State was the one that really surprised me. It didn't seem like that the Ole Miss game was one that we had to have Kiffin on the sidelines for. So maybe it was a good thing that if he's going to be out due to COVID with all of those restrictions on it, might as well get it out of the way now, so that he will be there on the sideline for the rest of the games as the calendar and the schedule and the games increase in difficulty and expectations. Yeah.
Well, you wonder, especially with LSU, is this just a 1 week thing, or are the Bayou Bengals becoming the Bayou Bengals? I hope not, because I love to see Tennessee succeed. I love to see LSU succeed. I don't know why, because they beat Tennessee a few years ago at the very end of the game, and untimed down, I believe, because Tennessee had 12 men on the field, had stopped LSU to win. Penalty flag, LSU then scores on the next play, wins.
Yeah.
But their fans are so electric.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in their Death Valley more than Clemson's Death Valley, because Clemson, I don't know, it's fine, whatever. But LSU, I mean, things get weird at night in Death Valley in Louisiana.
Yes, they do.
So that just makes that's why college football is so fun. So week 1 is always full of surprises because, like a box of chocolates, you don't know what you're going to get. Thank you, Forrest Gump.
Thank you, Forrest.
Which I gotta say also makes picking games really tough as well. So going back through our week 1 pick'ems, everyone who picked early enough to pick the Bowling Green Tennessee game picked Tennessee. We all were wrong. Tennessee almost covered, but not quite. So we're all wrong there. Other trends, we were all wrong with LSU. We were all right with Texas A&M and Arkansas. Look at Arkansas covering. So all in all, winner for last week, BB, will be in touch with you. And for those of you who don't play, you get to pick a nickname. You can use your real name if you want to, but you get to pick your own mascot name, basically. So BB,
now
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, just for people that are joining us in coming weeks, can you change that up? Can you have a new nickname, or is it best to just keep the same one week after week?
You can change it up if you want. Every week, if you want a new nickname, that's fine.
Gotcha.
So BB's in first place. I will also put together a leaderboard as well, and have that available to you to check out, so you can just see who's in first place as we go throughout the season. But yeah, I mean, there were, the spreads were 35, 31, 19 and a half, 23, 37, 40 and a half. I mean, these are big spreads. The closest one was Georgia Clemson and LSU UCLA, both at 3. It's hard to pick those big spreads because I think we've said this before. You get in there, you put in your third stringers. There may be some touchdowns late, some field goals late that just throw that. So that can really throw things off. So now let's get to some news this week out of Tuscaloosa. Bryce Young on a podcast. So Chris, tell me about this podcast thing.
Yeah, big shocker that there is NIL news coming out of Tuscaloosa. It seems like that. And again, being an Alabama fan, I'm paying attention to it. But it seems like Bryce Young and the Crimson Tide are big points of conversation when it comes to NIL. But it looks like that Bryce Young has inked a deal with Colin Cowherd's podcasting company or his media group to host a podcast every week. So now Bryce Young, the first string quarterback for Alabama, is also going to podcasting duties that will release every Tuesday. So this is interesting. Like Saban doesn't even allow his players to talk to the press,
right?
Outside of the end of the season or playoffs or, for your bowl game or whatever, or at the beginning of the season, but like middle of the season, we don't like distractions. So the fact that Bryce Young, his ace in the hole quarterback, is going to actually be talking, at least in a one-sided way, on a podcast. Very interesting. What are your thoughts about a active player hosting a weekly podcast? I mean, I'm all for it. We love podcasts, as evidence being right here that we have a YouTube/podcast right here. But for someone in his place and his responsibility, it's a lot to take care of.
Right. Well, I just have a hard time believing that little Nicky Saban signed off on this.
It still scares me when you say it.
Because if Alabama loses a game this year and Bryce Young has a statistically bad game, or maybe it's still a statistically good game, but late fumble, late interception, something that prevents Alabama from securing a win, what does Saban do? Does he say, look, I think you're distracted by all this other stuff that's going on, you need to cut back? I don't know.
Yeah. I've talked about a lot, like last Friday's show and several shows this season, about how I'm nervous about what this NIL $1 million deal that Bryce Young has going on right now, if that'll be a detriment to him. And I was nervous that would be something that I was looking forward to finding out more information on when I watched him play last Saturday. And to be honest with you, like I was expecting the whole of the Crimson Tide to warm up to the game. But that was not the case. It's like they came out swinging and they didn't really let up on Miami the whole game. And Bryce Young played with poise. He played with confidence. He played with calm. And so I don't know, maybe it's like you're saying that Nicholas Lou Saban Jr., Esquire, PhD, is maybe he's saying like, okay, go do it. I can't stop you according to these new rules, but if we see it starting to interfere, then I'm going to invite you back into the office to talk about something more negative. So it's such a wild way that we're living life right now. We're like college students are just at their whim, making money how they want to, host a podcast if they want to, taking teams to national championship, I hope. But we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah. Heaven forbid there's another Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa situation where, somebody gets pulled and then the backup comes in and is just the star because, it's a gamble for these businesses to pay these players a lot of money when they are unproven. They're in college because it's the minor leagues. Well, they're in the SEC because it's the minor leagues. They're in the other divisions, the other conferences because it's college. But very interesting development there with Bryce Young in that podcast deal. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how that's going to, end up. I don't know what that's going to look like going forward. Yeah. It's a learning year.
Wild, Wild West, man. It's like
right?
Every season we have a new version of what the college football Wild, Wild West looks like, but it is ever present right now.
Yeah. Can we just get back to normal college football without pandemics, without distractions of NIL? Not right. That I'm saying we should get rid of it, but let's just let it become normal. So looking forward to week 2.
Mm-hmm.
We need to make some picks. A lot of games. Can I just say, last week, CBS did not have an SEC game of the week, which meant everything was broadcast on an ABC, ESPN affiliate. It was awesome, but I'm going to need a bigger screen because I've got, through the ESPN app, I've got one game highlighted big, and then I've got 3 along the side.
Oh, my favorite thing in the world.
But my screen's not big enough. So I don't know. I'm going to have to go get a side hustle just to buy a bigger TV. But there was a game on Thursday. There were 12 games on Saturday. And then there was a game Monday night, a lot of football to be watched this week. 13 games on Saturday because 2 SEC opponents do actually start SEC play and take on each other. But I'm really excited about this. So let's make some picks.
Do it, baby.
Let's start with the Johnny Majors Classic. Anytime Tennessee from now and into the future plays Pittsburgh, it's going to be called the Johnny Majors Classic. These teams have only met, I think, twice before, maybe once before. So who is Johnny Majors? What's going on? Johnny Majors played at Tennessee. He has made the College Football Hall of Fame as a player. After playing, he went and was a coach. He was a coach at Pittsburgh, won them a national championship in when was it? The mid to late 70s, I think. The year after they win the national championship, he's offered the head coaching job at his alma mater at Tennessee. He takes it, rebuilds a program, does not win a national championship, but gets them back into national news in good ways. Paves the road for Phil Fulmer to then come in and win a national championship in 98. So Johnny Majors has also made the College Football Hall of Fame as a coach. So not only a player, but as a coach. So these ties between both Tennessee and Pittsburgh, anytime they meet, it's going to be called the Johnny Majors Classic. This year is quite intriguing because Tennessee's got an offensive-minded coach. Pitt's got a defensive-minded coach. The teams are very even, and so the spread is only 3.5. At least it's 3.5 when we're making picks. This thing is moving back and forth. I've seen it as close as 1, and as far apart as 3.5. So right now, Pitt is favored by 3.5. I thought about picking against Tennessee because I don't want to jinx myself, but then I didn't want to jinxing myself. So I'm fanboying. I'm going with Tennessee to cover and win outright. It's in Neyland Stadium. It's going to be loud. It should be a beautiful fall day. Go Big Orange.
Go Big Orange indeed. Go Volunteers. I'm picking the Volunteers to roll and to win outright, as well as to take all those points and run with them. Again, I'm excited. They're my favorite team in the East, even though they're your favorite team overall. Like I still root for them, except for the third Saturday in October. But
or the fourth Saturday in October, depending on the year.
Depending on the year, or I guess now it seems like every year it's on the fourth Saturday now. Right. Just making a mockery of our podcast and YouTube channel name. But yeah, I agree. I think that Tennessee does come back. Oh, and to mention that, I looked it up. Johnny Majors, as a coach, won the national championship at Pittsburgh in 1976. So this is the 45th anniversary of that season.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure they'll mention several times. They always mention it if it rounds up to like a 5 or a 10 on how long it's been. Man, they like really make a mountain out of those molehills. So the 45th anniversary of Johnny Majors as a coach winning the national championship with Pittsburgh. So this is cool that this year they're playing Tennessee. But yeah, I choose Tennessee. And again, maybe this is my Homer SEC fanboy coming out too, but that's why I'm sticking with Tennessee.
Well, it's like, hey, everybody talks about, when the next, I guess in a couple of years, we'll have the 1998 National Championship, memorial, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, yay, another 5 years of not being national contenders. Anyways, then we've got Alabama State at Auburn. Different kind of Alabama at Auburn, but Auburn 35-point favorite. I'm picking the War Eagles.
Yeah.
Now it's all dependent on which Bo Nix shows up, but I don't know. Maybe it's Brian Harsin has got the formula for Bo Nix, but let's see Bo Nix and Tanks Bigsby just go off on Alabama State and cover a 35-point spread.
Yeah, I used to think like if there was a spread over 30 points, I automatically took the under, or I automatically said that they're not going to cover those points because again, this is barely a decade ago. Like people don't score that much, and there's not that there's more parity. But now with a team like Auburn playing something like or a team like Alabama State, 35-point spread, I'm like, with the way Bo Nix played last week and that momentum, yes, it could have been a fluke, and we always get different versions of Bo Nix, so it's hard to be able to forecast that consistently. But I say that they take it. And Alabama State and Auburn were the two universities closest to my house growing up, right outside of Montgomery, Alabama. And so I almost went to Alabama State. And so when a team like that, like a UAB pops up on an SEC schedule, or a Alabama State, or even a Jacksonville State, or something like that, I'm always excited for these smaller schools in Alabama to play these larger SEC schools. But Alabama State, I don't know that can hold much of a candle to the top 25 Auburn Tigers over there in the Plains. So I say that Auburn takes it.
And then we've got South Carolina, 2-point favorite at East Carolina. I'm going to be honest. I think South Carolina gets a dose of reality. Only a 2-point favorite at East Carolina. Yeah. I'm going with East Carolina.
All right. So Coach Beamer, I think that things were better last week than I expected for them to be at South Carolina. And so with the spread being as close as it is, I'm staying SEC homer. I'm going to pick South Carolina to carry this home. So again, not a lot of data points to put together with with South Carolina so far in my head, just because I don't tend to pay attention to them as much as some other schools in the SEC. But I almost lived in Columbia. Talking again about my experience with it all. Had an apartment there and ended up turning around and not taking it because we moved to Los Angeles instead. But love Columbia, love South Carolina, was excited to become a Gamecocks fan back in like 2001, 2002. But they're still recovering. But I think maybe enough to take down East Carolina this week.
Yeah, I don't know what East Carolina's mascot is, but we'll see if they're a match for the Fighting Chickens. Then we've got Florida, 28.5-point favorite at University of South Florida. So I hate picking Florida, but
I knew you were going to say it. I love it that you hate picking it so much.
I really do. I really hate saying that Florida's going to do well, but I'm going with the Gators in this one.
Yeah, me too. 28.5 points. Again, that old school thought of my head, if it's anything over 30 points. So this is a little easier for me to think that Florida is going to take this. I still need a bit more data to see in my head, at least what I expect Florida to do the rest of the season. But I think that they can cover 28.5.
And then UAB at Georgia. UAB had a football program for a while. It got shut down for a couple of years, I think. And then it's back. I think Georgia's offense comes alive. JT Daniels. Look, Clemson's got a good defense.
Yeah.
So I think Georgia's offense comes alive. It needs to against UAB. I'm picking Georgia to cover a 24.5-point spread.
Yeah, I'm picking Georgia too. I should have said this at the beginning of the show about surprises. I did not expect that Clemson-Georgia game to be as low scoring. I didn't expect Georgia to hold Clemson to no scores. I mean, like a lot of people are still picking Clemson to go all the way and this be a dose of reality that allows them to rebound and play with their hearts and make it back to the playoffs. But it exposed some issues that Clemson does need to work on. So that was very surprising. Georgia was stout, even though they weren't perfect.
Yeah.
That was a stout game. This week they play UAB from Birmingham, University of Alabama, Birmingham. Their head coach, Bill Clark, used to coach my high school alma mater, Prattville High School in Prattville, Alabama, and is now the head coach at UAB. So, but as much as I would love to root Bill Clark on, and I will every play, I still think that Georgia has enough firepower to, compete with that spread at 24.5. So I pick Georgia.
Yeah. And speaking of Georgia Clemson, the dose of reality is Georgia's defense set. I think it was 7 sacks. It may have been 8. But at one point it was at least 7 sacks. That defense is good. So I think
it's scary. Yeah.
It's just a matter of, can they get that offense clicking? Once they do, Georgia's scary. Then we've got Texas A&M at Colorado. A&M favored by 17. I wasn't as impressed with Texas A&M this last week against Kent State as I was hoping to be, but I still think they can cover 17 at Colorado.
Yeah, I do too. I'm picking Texas A&M as well.
And then we got Mercer at Alabama. This is sitting at a 40-point advantage for Alabama, and I'm still picking Alabama, even though Mercer beat somebody 69-0 this last week, I believe it was.
Really? Whoa.
Yeah. But it's Mercer, and Mercer is in Macon, Georgia. Georgia makes some good Florida players. I mean, Florida players. They probably make some good Florida players too. They make some good football players.
Yeah, they do.
But they usually don't go to Mercer. So I'm going with the Tide to cover 40 points.
Yeah, me too. And especially because I had an ex-girlfriend that her brother was on scholarship with their baseball team at Mercer. Things didn't end well with that relationship. I don't think things are going to end well for Mercer this weekend. Again, 40 points is enormous, but and again, maybe this is one of those things where Alabama goes out there and plays lights out against Miami. And this week they're looking to recoup and to rest up, maybe because they're, again, like you said, playing Mercer. But I think that Bryce Young really plays with heart and really competes at that next level. But I imagine that if it's well in hand, they usually what Alabama does is if the starting quarterback comes back at halftime and plays, if the game is well in hand, they'll play like a series, and then the rest of the game they bring in the quarterback second and third strings depending on the scores and stuff. So I imagine that Bryce Young and the rest of that high-powered offense is going to score somewhere between 28 and 42 points before halftime. That's my prediction, and then things slow down for Bama to maybe win by a good 7 touchdowns or 8 touchdowns in the end. And again, I it sounds like it's hard for me to say it, but it sounds like bragging. But I was all ready to watch them kind of wait to get their feet underneath them last week, and then was surprised that they played as tough as they did. So I'm pulling for Bama to go hard at it on Saturday against Mercer.
Yeah, they came out swinging. Then we've got a preview of a new SEC rivalry. Texas at Arkansas. Texas is favored by 6.5. And I want to say Arkansas welcomes them to the SEC with either a loss or a very close win. I think Arkansas covers the spread on this one in Texas. If they win, do not win by a touchdown.
Ugh. Ugh. Well, it's hard for me. I'm actually picking Texas in this one to keep that 6.5 points because, again, I'm an SEC homer, and I'm already looking at as Texas and Oklahoma as our boys now. Like, come on home, welcome home, kind of thing. Welcome to the SEC. I'm impressed with Sarkisian, the head coach at Texas, but I don't know if this is going to be an overall exciting game, but I do feel like Texas has what it takes. And I think that, the Arkansas gives us an SEC loss, but only to bring it next year into this could be an SEC win, regardless of who's playing in it. So I'm picking Texas, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that Sam Pittman has Arkansas playing inspired football. Then we've got Austin Peay, Nashville School, at Ole Miss. Ole Miss by 35. I'm going with Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin should be back. Look, he is an offensive genius. And seeing what Ole Miss did against Louisville, 35 points should be no problem.
Yeah, I agree. I think old head coach that throws the clipboards all over the place. Like, he throws his clipboards higher and longer than his quarterbacks can throw the deep ball. And so I'm excited that Lane's back on the sidelines. It's always entertaining when he's there. I think Ole Miss takes it.
Yeah. And speaking of Lane Kiffin, he's had a lot more time to be on Twitter. He's retweeting some funny stuff right now. Then we've got the SEC matchup of the week, Missouri at Kentucky. Kentucky, a 5-point favorite. I think I believe in Kentucky's offense right now. I'm going Kentucky to cover. I think they win by more than a touchdown against Missouri at home.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I initially picked Missouri, and then I, did a little bit more soul searching and changed my answer to Kentucky. But Kentucky is better than I thought that they were going to be. You had high hopes for them. I think that you're saying third or fourth in the East.
Yeah.
When it's all said and done, I was a little bit more hesitant with Kentucky. Again, I think that this is bias of typically in the SEC, Kentucky as a football team is not as strong as some of the other teams. But I do think that Kentucky has some firepower and that they're going to bring it out to beat Missouri by at least 5. So I can pick Kentucky.
It's this new offensive coordinator, this new offensive mindset that I think has turned things around. Mm-hmm. Then we've got McNeese at LSU. LSU, a 24-point favorite. Not good after the showing against UCLA, but I think the Bayou Bengals come out, want to prove that, hey, we've got it from we've still got some of that mojo from 2019. 2020 was a fluke. Last week was a fluke. And is Coach O coaching for his job? I don't know. It's really hard when you've got 2020, which is just bonkers, plus Hurricane Ida, your first game. I want to give the man a break, but it's also college football. Nobody gets breaks. But LSU by 24, I'm taking LSU.
Yeah, me too. I like Coach O, but I mean, people are already with a loss to UCLA, and I don't know why this is necessarily coming out, but I'm already hearing things like, is Coach O in the hot seat? And you expect to come off a national championship season and at least have a fair showing, if not just as good as last season kind of thing. But they certainly did not have the kind of season in 2020 that they did in 2019. With that, it's like it's been all over the map. And I heard someone on ESPN talking about it the other day, and it seemed what they were saying is like they're scared that the 2019 season may look now more like a fluke with something inspired like Joe Burrow and who was the offensive coordinator that year that went on from there, or Joe Brady or somebody like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, they were more of a fluke scenario in 2019. But if you look at the whole of Coach O's tenure there, that maybe the ceiling is not as high as those record-breaking, ceiling-breaking records that they were doing in 2019. But still, after the loss, they've got to reclaim what they feel like is theirs. They've got to show the public why they are LSU. And so I think that they come out firing hard, even if it's somebody like McNeese.
And finally, Vanderbilt at Colorado State. A lot of games in Colorado this weekend. Colorado State by 7. After last week's showing, I'm going with Colorado State. Just not a lot of faith in Vanderbilt right now.
Yeah. Again, that was a complete surprise from last week. And again, I didn't even watch the game, but just getting those updates and seeing how far they were then trailing in that game, it was a bummer. So yeah, I'm also picking our Vanderbilt to lose to Colorado State. Yeah, interesting. 2 smaller schools from Alabama playing other teams in the SEC. 2 teams from Colorado playing SEC teams. So a lot of representation in those 2 states. But to get back to it, just wanted to say Colorado State. I'm picking to take those. And it's weird to pick against Vanderbilt, but oh well, you got to do what you got to do.
You got to do what you got to do. Well, the picks are in, so make sure to get your picks in by the 11 a.m. Central, noon Eastern kickoff on Saturday. You can sign up for that over at thirdsaturdaynoctober.com. Go there now to make your picks. Our picks are in. There's only one thing left to do, and that is pregame.
Pregame.
Tailgate, man cave, living room, pregame, burgers, ribs, chicken wings, chip and dip, pregame, scotch and a lot of IPA, Coca-Cola, pregame, slaying darts, cornhole, pregame. How you gonna watch?
So, Chris, how are you watching Alabama Mercer this weekend?
Same as last week. I'm going to be on the big screen, on the big couch in front of a big spread of food. And I'm excited again, football for me is it's a way to spend a Saturday, and it's a way to have a celebration every week. And so for me and the fam, we're going to have football games going on. We're going to be using that ESPN app on our Apple TV to have multiple games going on at one time. It's beautiful. It's fun. And so we're going to have multiple games. We're going to have multiple things to snack on, and hopefully multiple people sitting around me. But as my kids are getting on into teenage years, it's like I was several years ago. My teenage years, I was too busy having fun with my friends to sit down and watch football. And I think they're going through that phase. So it's a little lonelier than it has been in recent years, but that's all right, because I know that I have the opportunity to have virtual tailgates and invite other people over if need be, if the family's not going to be sitting around me. So I'm excited for this Saturday, even if the kids are out at the pool or they're playing with friends out in the neighborhood. What about you?
Well, so I remember being in high school and Tennessee. I love Tennessee football. I remember deciding not to go to homecoming because Tennessee was playing Georgia. Tennessee was getting their butts beat. So I gave up, left my grandparents' house, and begrudgingly went to homecoming. Showed up stag in jeans. Everybody else is in, khakis and a tie. And I was like, I'm just not in a good mood. Last week, my son and I, he's almost 2, we're watching the Tennessee game, and he said a word that I've never heard him say before: football. Well, it has started. He loved watching football. He now points at the TV and says football. So I'll replay the game. I'll replay another game. I'll put on ESPN, whatever I have to do to give him what he wants. But we're going to be at a family wedding this weekend, so I'm not going to be in front of the TV. We're going to be driving back home on Saturday. So I will be doing what I did on many Saturdays growing up. I'll be watching football on the radio. It's just as good for me as watching it on TV. So that's how I'll be watching it. Let us know how you're watching it. Also, be sure to make your picks. All of that you can make your picks. You can get our tailgating 101 cheat sheet. You can find links to all of our social media over at thirdsaturdaynoctober.com. Also, don't forget your Monday morning quarterback submission. Record it after the game Saturday. Send it to us at podcast@thirdsaturdaynoctober.com. Tell us how your favorite team did. Or if you just kind of want to give us some of your big surprises from the weekend, give us that too. You'll find it then on this podcast and on YouTube on Monday. It's fall in the South. It's not really fall. It's just kind of summer 2.0 because it's still hot, but we've got football. I love it. And I love this season because
me too,
I get to say roll Vols.
I love it for so many reasons, but that's one of them too. I love saying it. Roll Vols, baby.